Okay, and we are back again for another episode of the Easy Peasy Books podcast. And I have a lovely friend and guest in the house today who is a brand new author. And I'm celebrating you, Sarah. Yay, yay, yay. And she has just released her first book and written and published. And I saw the post. You were so excited. So your book just came out last month because we're now in December, but it came out in November. And so celebrating for you, Sarah. So Sarah Dodd, before we get stuck in and start talking about your book and your book journey, your author's journey, can you tell us first who you are and what you do besides being the tree hugging lawyer? I love that name for you, but tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, thanks, Gillian. So I'm Sarah Dodd. I'm the CEO and founder of Tree Law, which is a law firm in the UK, and we specialize in all sorts of claims around trees. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. And why don't you go ahead and hold up that book that you have there peeking in at us. So it's a practical guide to the law in relation to tree root subsidence claims. Did I say that word right?
Subsidence, yeah.
Subsidence claims. Okay. And you are the author, Sarah Dodd. And so tell us a little bit, let's go into the backstory of like, why a book? Like why did you even decide to write a book? Where did that all come from? What inspired you?
So tree root subsidence is a really tiny area of law, but it's the one that I've specialized in for the last 20 years or so. And over the years, people have referenced, it'd be really great if somebody wrote a book about this. It'd be really handy if there was a book. And I said, oh yeah, I'd love a book on this. So it was something that was in the back of my mind as knowing that it would be a useful reference book. One of the things that pushed me to do it is the publisher that publishes this book and the variety of books in this series is they're very much a book on law by lawyers written for lawyers. So it's a little bit like you write a book for other lawyers, but on your unique specialism. So there are some really wild and wonderful titles and topics that are covered by this publisher. And I had used one of those books myself in the past. I needed a book dealing with invasive species, and somebody had written a book on it, and I bought it, and it was so useful. And I thought, oh, this is exactly the sort of book I'd like to have for the area that I work in. So that's how it started. And then I got thinking, I wonder if I could do it. I wonder if I had the time. I wonder if I've got the ability. So that's where it started.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you had found the publisher before you even were thinking of buying a book, writing a book, because you bought a book through them. And so was it a chicken or egg thing? Did you find the publisher and you just knew about all those books, or were you looking for that book and that's how you found the publisher?
I was looking for that book. That's how I found the publisher. That I bought the book and it was incredibly useful. And I'd remembered that there were lots in their library online. So I thought, I'm going to go back on and, if this was so useful and inexpensive, let's have a look and see what other titles that are there. And there's loads of titles. And then there's also a click this link if you want to submit a suggestion for writing a book. And I thought, maybe I could click the link and make a suggestion. So one day I did. I clicked the link and I dropped them an email.
That's brilliant. And I love the idea. To be honest with you, Sarah, I have never seen a niche publisher, because I went and did some research and I saw them, and we'll give them a shout. They're Law Brief Publishing. Is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Correct. And I thought they had such a clean model of, and you're not going to start putting books about, I don't know, I wouldn't put my book there. Like it wouldn't belong. It's like very, very niche, where it's like these books are legal books. Are they specific to your location as well, though, Sarah? So it's like, is somebody who lives in Italy or something, would it be relevant to them, or is it sort of just more of a UK thing?
I think it's more UK, But I know it goes further than England and Wales, because I bought a book, for example, on forestry in Scotland, because that's slightly outside of my jurisdiction, but that was included. So who knows, there could be some sort of more Europe-wide books in there, but it's definitely, I know it's got a focus on England, Wales, and Scotland.
Okay. Okay. And what I thought was very unique about them is that it was very clear if you wanted to, submit a book proposal, very clear process. They kind of tell you, we're looking for a book that's at least, I think it's 15,000 words, but they'd like it a little bit longer if you could, but not longer than this. Like, they really put those clear guidelines together for you so that you have, exactly what you're getting into. And, without any questions. So you go through. So you submitted that button, you submitted your proposal, and then walk us through what was the process? What happened next?
So the two gentlemen that own the business are ex-barristers. And in the UK, we've got a differentiation between barristers and solicitors. So we're all sort of lawyers, but a barrister is usually the person that goes to court and stands up and talks, whereas the solicitor's the one sort of beavering away doing the work in the office. And these two barristers saw a niche in, a niche that wasn't being utilized, and they set up Law Brief Publishing. So when I made my submission, the first thing that happened was I had a conversation with one of them. I spoke to them about what work I did, the background, why I thought it would be interesting, who might want to read it. So I sort of told them about the book. And I think there was a period of time where they went away and had to think about whether they agreed that there would be an interest for people in wanting to read it. Is anyone going to want to read this book? They obviously needed to double check they didn't already have a book on this title that had been written. And then when they gave me the go ahead to that, then I got into the realms of something that was very familiar from having read your book, Gillian, in that it was a lot of tips and encouragement about how to get started, and really they gave me a breakdown as to how to even begin to tackle it. And it was as a result of that conversation that I really thought, I think I can do it, because they made an enormous project feel it wasn't insurmountable any longer. It felt like I could have a go.
Nice. So did you then start working on, did you just start typing, or did you decide, okay, I'm going to make an outline, I'm going to figure what goes in this, and you did the more structured approach, which, as a lawyer, I would kind of think that's kind of a no-brainer. It's not like a novel. You just start typing. It's just like, you have to say, okay, what all am I going to include? Especially when you're working within a strong definition of the boundaries of, like, okay, I don't want this to be, a gigantic War and Peace size book. I want it to be a quick, easy read. And you probably wanted to make the experience the same for your reader that you had when you got that first book of, this is exactly what I needed to know.
And I would say that I wouldn't say obviously as long planning it as I did writing it, but it was quite a while. I sort of set out a plan, a little bit like an essay plan. It reminds me of writing essays when I was in university. But I revisited that. So I'd write it and then I'd leave it alone. And then, as I was getting along, walking the dog or driving to work or something, I'd think, oh, I don't think I put a chapter on so-and-so in the book. Let me just go back and have a look at the plan. Then I'd add that in. So I made sure that I was really comfortable with the outline and what topics I wanted to cover in each chapter, and then started writing the chapters. And that definitely made it feel easier, because it just felt like writing small essays then.
Right. And I think that's the thing. It's like, when you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to write a book, it can feel very overwhelming. But if you just say, well, I'm actually really just going to write the outline and get that stored away. And then it's like, okay, I'm just going to work on one chapter at a time. A chapter can almost feel like a blog post. And so it's, even if you break it down into the sections of a chapter, it's like, okay, I'm just going to write this section of the chapter. It makes it so much more manageable than just this, I'm going to write a book. That almost seems way too overwhelming.
And one of the tips that one of the gentlemen at the publishers gave me was, don't almost micromanage yourself. Put an hour aside, go into your office, write the chapter. Don't second guess everything you're writing. Just let it flow. Just write it down and then leave it and walk away and then come back to it. So it just made it feel, I don't know, just less high risk. I could just have a go, put something down, leave it alone, and then have a look at it again later.
I love that. And did you find that you, how did you find the time? Because that's always, you're busy. You're very busy with your law practice. And so you're just like, okay, I don't have time to go off for 2 months and write a book. I have to keep doing things. I got to still walk the dog and everything else. So how did you kind of find time? Did you give up things? Did you stop watching Netflix for a while? Did you do it on Saturdays? How did you do it?
I wouldn't say that I was a last minute kind of girl, but I have to admit that due to pressure on time, it ended up being a deadline looming that got me focused. And what I did then is I scheduled time to write chapter by chapter by chapter. But I finally got the whole book, I think, finished off and over the line when my husband and I went on holiday to Cornwall. And I think because I was out of the office, I was away from my usual distractions, I was putting a couple of hours aside to just, make sure all the chapters sort of speak to one another and it flows nicely. It's in the right order. So I finished it off then. So it was mainly a chapter here and there, but then a chunk of time aside to get it all finished when I was away on holiday, which obviously my husband was delighted of me writing a book while we were on holiday.
That's good. That's good. And I've actually found the same, that it's like, while you can write the majority of the books in bits and pieces, when you get down to that part where you've got the rough draft and now you're trying to polish it, you really want some blocks of time that you can kind of, look at it and in a flow and not be disjointed, because you're just like, okay, I want to see when I read chapter 3 and then I go on to chapter 4, does it make sense? Or is there this big leap that I didn't realize wasn't there? So I agree with you that it's like, bits and pieces at the beginning, but then when you're kind of doing that final polish, you want it to go. So what did you do for an editor? Did the press, did the law brief, did they provide the editor for you, or did you have to go out and do it on your own?
So they did quite a bit of the editing. Obviously I did it and I got my colleagues to have a read of it too. And do you know what? I think I approached you and spoke to you about feeling brave and releasing a book. And you said you are going to find errors when you look back at it. And you just need to think, I'll deal with those in a new edition if and when I need to. So I think it was a mix of me and my colleagues doing it, and then also the editors helping out as well.
That's good. That's good.
The publisher, sorry. Yeah.
That's good. And we try our best, and it's like, I know, like, even when you get back that proof, and that's the next question I'm going to ask you, is when you get that proof back, you're just like, how did everybody miss this? That's when you see it, when it's like all of a sudden a real book and you're like, how come when I'm looking at the Microsoft Word document, I never saw this, but as soon as it's like a proof. And thank goodness they make proofs, because if you go from a Microsoft Word document to a book that's for sale.
Yeah. And I remember one of the things I liked about your book, which actually I didn't get around to doing in mine, and if I did a new edition, I would do this, was what I loved about the end of each of your chapters was you did like a little summary. I loved that. And I tucked that away and thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a little summary at the end of each of my chapters. And it's something that fell by the wayside, but it would be something that I would really want to try and do next. Well, if I refresh this or if I write another one.
Okay. And you know what? There's always something. And I think that's, I think that's a really good thing, that like when we read other books, always pay attention to what you like, because
Mm,
it could come in handy. And sometimes it's not appropriate for the particular book you're doing at the particular time. And you just go, but I like this format and I'll use it again. So it's like, I know for me, I love putting quotes at the beginning of my chapters. I don't know why I do that. Not everybody does that. Some people do it, but it's like, I always feel it kind of sets the stage of, what you're
mm,
going to be talking about. And maybe reading that quote will later, you read the chapter and you hear that quote again sometime, and you're like, oh, that reminds me of that chapter in the book. That's what I'm always hoping for.
mm,
So I think it's good to like kind of scroll that away. Oh, I like that. And it may not be right for one book, but it might be good for another one.
mm. That's great. That's a good tip.
I love that. I love that. So you got the book, they did that. They did the editing, and
Mhm,
I assume that at that point, then they made the proof. And did
mhm.
you get to see the proof before it went live, or how was that part handled?
I did. I got to see the proof. And because it's a legal book, there was some issues with some footnoting. So I think some of the case law that I'd referenced. So I was very focused on making sure that I reference things correctly, and that, obviously there's a way to reference case law, there's a way to reference other academic writers. And I was very focused on making sure that I did that correctly in a way that was, not breaching any copyright or not stepping into the realms of plagiarism. So I have to admit that my focus was very much on that when I was proofreading the sort of final version, which is frustrating because I've already seen a typo in there, which is just, an addition of a too many ands or something. But yeah, I guess it's just one of those things.
Definitely, definitely. But that's good. And it's good to, it's good that you have to protect yourself with books. So referencing people, one of the things I found is that, putting in photographs, you have to go and get permission and, the legalities of including stuff. So I can imagine as a lawyer, you almost have to be like double over.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that I wanted in the appendix to the book, and I had to take it out because I would either have had to reach out to the people that originally produced that document for permission, or it would have had to have a certain status, and I just couldn't be sure of it. So I just had to talk about it rather than actually annex the documents into the book. Yeah. And I was also told when I had that first meeting with them and they were helping me, how to sit down and write a book, they said, no pictures. Which I would have loved to put a diagram in, or a couple of diagrams, because explaining the sort of physicality of what happens when a property is damaged in this sort of claim does lend itself nicely to a diagram. But I couldn't use one.
Yep. And, that's understandable. That's, some publishers like pictures and some publishers don't. It does make the typesetting and layout a little bit tricky. Now, is your book also being available as an ebook, or is it simply paperback? Is it simply a paperback version?
It's just a paperback version, so you can't get it on an ebook. One of the things I did ask the publishers when the book was ready was, could I do it as an audiobook? If I put some time aside, would they be happy? Would I be breaching the agreement that I had with them if I turned it into an audiobook? And actually, one of the gentlemen who is in that publishing team is visually impaired. So he said he'd be absolutely delighted if I turned it into an ebook, because an audiobook, because he uses audiobooks a lot himself, and obviously is really encouraging of, producing something that's useful for people that aren't able to read the book. So that is on my list of things to do. If you have any tips about how to turn it into an audiobook.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because the new wave now, of course, is AI. And there are different, personally speaking, I don't know if I would ever use AI to do my book. There's pros and there's cons. One is because I use my books to build my brand, I always want my books to be in my voice. So that's very important to me. But for other books, maybe it doesn't necessarily matter. And you can actually there's many, many companies out there right now that you can have it in just, you pick a voice. So you can say, okay, I want to use this software and I'll have it read my read my book, and they do it. You can also hire a voice actor. So that's a nice thing where you have a real human being reading your book. And it could be somebody who's male or female, whatever you feel would be most appropriate for your book. And so that's kind of one way to go. And of course, you can choose what's the accent. Do I want to have a voice actor who's, an American, a Brit? It's like that's important too. So doing that. And then the latest thing that's coming out is now voice clones. Where it's AI, it's you as a voice clone. And so what you have to do is you have to basically, I think the best one I think out right now is 11 Labs. And you have to train it to recognize your voice. So you upload, I think you can upload like 2 hours worth of like maybe you talking on podcasts and videos and different things. And so Sarah, this would be good because you've done so many videos. It's like your voice is out there and podcasts and whatever. And then it begins to get a feel for the way that you read your book. And then the only thing that you have to do is you have to prep your book in order for it to be good for AI, which means stripping it of like, page numbers, because you don't want it to go, 42, you don't want it to keep saying the title at the top of the page or something like that. And then some words, you just want, there's certain things like even just saying AI, if you don't separate A space I, it usually will read it as I, right? Because it's seeing it as a word. So sometimes, that's where you might want to get a VA that goes through it and just says, what are some weird words that, maybe we'd have to do some spacing, or it's like my name. My name is never going to be said right by AI. So I have to trick it and say it's Jillian with a J when it's not, because otherwise it will never pronounce my name. So those are just some of the tricks. But yeah, audiobooks, I think that is a wonderful market. And to know that your publisher is okay with that, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know where I would host it either. So once I have the recording, I don't know. It's a totally new thing. I don't know where I would host it, on what platform, and how that works. Well,
there's of course, Amazon is the biggest player, and a lot of audiobooks, because people can buy an audiobook package and listen. But one-offs is Spotify, where a lot of people now who just want to sell one audiobook and they just want people to be able to purchase it and listen to it. Spotify is really one of the biggest up and coming players right now. So that's a good one to go with. So I can see if I can find some more, and I'll add them in as a little extra bonus if I can kind of get a list of good places to go. But I hear Spotify is good.
Thanks. I'll try it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. So when you were writing your book and you were trying, you said it took you about 6 months. Did you feel that did that surprise you? Like, was that short or long to you when you just went, okay, it took me about 6 months to write my book? What did you how did you feel about that?
I think short. I think it felt short because I was doing it in I felt like I was doing it in tiny pieces. But eventually it did feel like it came together quite quickly. So yeah, I know that answer's probably saying two opposite things, but yeah, it did feel quite short in the end.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And then with your publisher, how does it go moving forward? So I know they're very, very clever and very organized. They have a newsletter. They send the books, so they notify people that, hey, we've got this new book. then it's also on the website. So you send people back to their website and then they can see your book as well as other people's books. So it's like they can get your book and say, oh, how about this one as well? And get other books as well. How long will they kind of keep showing your book? Is that kind of like a forever thing, or do you have a time limit or anything?
Oh, I don't know if there's a time limit. I think it's indefinite, but I should probably check with them. But yeah, so you can buy it directly through them. You can also buy it on Amazon.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
It's one of those sort of straight to print ones. I can't remember what those are called.
Print on demand. Print on demand, which is perfect. That's the way to go nowadays, especially for a tree hugging lawyer, because we don't want to kill trees. We want to be able to just print the book and, off it goes. And, that's just so nice. It makes so much sense to do that.
Yeah. And they also occasionally they'll release chapters from different books that they've got in their library. So they'll sort of release it on their website, give you a bit of a taster, and hook you in. So that's a great thing as well. And then this was just on a Black Friday deal as well. I think on Black Friday there was 25% off. But yeah, that's done now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So basically, I guess I wanted to just end it with asking you what's next. Like, now that you have a taste for being an author, do you feel that there's other books in you, and would you stick within the legal framework, or are you just like, wow, this has opened my eyes, now I want to do all sorts of different books? Where are you at now with this new author title?
I definitely think I'd like to do another one. I know when I put in my submission for this, I was torn between two options. So I'd like to write the other one as well. So the other one that I want to write is on protected trees. In the UK, very old trees or certain sorts of trees are protected, so you can't chop them down. So I'd like to write a book on that. I'm not sure about writing like a fiction book or something. I'd love to do that one day, but I think I would need to have some extra confidence to do that. I don't know whether I've got one of those in me yet.
Yeah. Well, and fiction is a totally different way of writing. You have to factor in dialogue and all sorts of different things. It's like, I know I have a couple of manuscripts that this would be a great novel. And I started it, and it was just like, it's really hard, because it's like, from whose perspective is the book, and is it going to bounce back between Ben and Jerry and the ice cream people? I don't know why they came to mind, but it's like, you just kind of go, do I want this in the past, in the present? There's a lot that goes into a fiction book. So it's kind of like, I said, I think that's kind of something I'll do one day when I retire. But in the meantime, it's like, I'll stick with business books. They're easier, or, memoirs or that sort of thing. That's a lot easier to write.
A friend of mine, she used to be a newsreader here in the UK, and she had an incident where she lost her voice live on air in the middle of doing a newsread, and she lost her voice sort of almost full stop. So she had to change careers, and she wants to write a book about her experience. She's talked on a lot of podcasts about it, but she wants to write a book, and she's recently been away on a book writing course, and she's just yet to take that next step. And I'm saying, please write it, like, please, I really want to read it. But it's just taking that big first step, isn't it, and getting your story out there.
It is. And I think at the end of the day, I think the greatest satisfaction is knowing that you're paying it forward. Like, if you've read a book and you've enjoyed a book, and then when you finally write a book and you're just like, if this just helps one person, that's how I always look at it. If one person reads this book and they this is just the book I needed at this particular time, whatever that book is, fiction, nonfiction, whatever, that book's made a difference. And so, that's a wonderful thing about your book, Sarah, is that you've now contributed to that collective of information out there, so that hopefully some lawyer is going, this is exactly what I needed to know. And now I've got it. I'm able to move forward. So it was like something they were struggling with, or they just needed that little bit of information, how that could make such a big difference. And that can make us just feel so proud.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. I am cheering you on. I'm very excited. Hold up your book again so that we can see the full thing. Lovely, lovely. Okay. And we'll be sure in the show notes to put how to get in touch with you, Sarah, and then of course, where to find your book and everything. And we just wish you all the luck, because now the fun begins, the marketing. It goes forever, but that's good, because you just have to find all the people that that could be looking for this book. You just keep moving forward.
Yeah. I mention it at least once a day. So hopefully that'll help.
That's good. That's good. That's all we can do, is just kind of keep talking about it and hope people, find it. And there's never too much you can say. Honest. There's never too much you can say, because you'll be surprised when a year from now, when somebody will go, I didn't know you wrote a book.
Yeah.
I feel like that's all I talk about. And it's like, you're going to find those people that say, I didn't know you wrote a book. So you have to keep on talking. Keep on talking.
I will. Thanks, Gillian.
Okay. Bye, everybody. We will see you again next week.